So it is that time of the year. Finally, Animal Crossing has come out. We've been talking about it for months on the show. It is probably one of my favorite series that Nintendo makes. It's been one of my favorite games for a very long time, and we have. It's been an interesting experience. It's been out for about 2 weeks as we record. It's probably a bit less, maybe a bit less, but the main takeaway from it is that it is at its core an Animal Crossing game. It feels like an Animal Crossing game, and everything about it is an Animal Crossing game. And that is 100% why you may love or hate it depending on that sentence. Because realistically, the main thing with the game is that it's always been one of those great portable games. You play it for 10, 15 minutes, you go fish some stuff, you go do whatever. It's a great time killer. And that's still true, but that's kind of all it is. Like, it still has a lot of the same things about the game that I love, and the way I play it. But if nothing else, the way I play it is exactly the same as I played the previous one. I'll be playing it for X amount of it, like, 15, 20 minutes or maybe an hour, put it down, play something else, do something else, come back in a couple hours, pick it up, play it for a little bit. So you basically do your dailies. It was one of the first games to do kind of dailies before anything. And because it runs on, obviously, the same clock as the rest of the world, it's a little bit more, it has more of an impact on your ability to do other stuff, and vice versa. Like, if you've got to do something or you're at work or whatever, you may not get to play it until X time, and you have to factor that into your playing, which in itself was always something unique about that game. And so, like I said, I love it, and I've been enjoying it a bunch, but it's not just about what I think of it. Maybe we should ask somebody else. So I decided to bring Megan on board to discuss it as well. Megan, thank you very much for joining me.
Hey, this is wild.
Yes,
Recording from my house, like,
fancy.
saving so much time.
Well, it's fancy in the sense that it's the opposite of RMIT, which is actually very fancy. So
It
it
is.
should hopefully be working okay. We've, all the gremlins should be out of the system by now. But I guess, what are your first thoughts on the game? Like, what's your impressions of it so far?
I'm super excited to talk about the New Horizons release because I have been so pumped for it. The world was ready for this to come out. I was ready for this to come out. And now I guess there's so much that is the same, but there's so much that's different. And one thing I really think we should highlight first off the bat is the quality of life improvements. Not only am I able to sit on my couch and play the game on my Switch, but I can choose to play it on my 4K TV, which might not look like 4K, but it is just as good. And I guess the attention to detail in the things like the ambience, the sound effects, like when I'm crunching all over the sand, but then all of a sudden I'm walking on grass, I can hear that audible difference. And what I'm a huge fan of is like things like when I'm watering my flowers and accidentally drip some water into the river next to it, the sound effects next are so obvious and so crispy and beautiful. I just think it really plays up to that whole escapism and just all the attention to detail.
And I feel that's one thing, like you say, it may not be a 4K game, but the one thing I've always given Nintendo credit for is their games scale very well. So let's say your game, their game might be 4K. I mean, people who use the Dolphin emulation software will know this, that Mario Sunshine, even upscaled, still looks really good because their art styles lend themselves to look good at different kind of things. And so, even though, like you say, Animal Crossing, I think the felt on Blather's feathers, the way, the one thing the games have always been good for is audio escape, though. You mentioned it before, but I mean, even the 3DS, if anything, the 3DS overperformed for it was always how good the audio was comparative to the video. Like that system was driven on the ability to plug in a set of headphones and just play it. And so they've carried that over really well into the new game. And you're absolutely right. I think that ambiance, that everything about it just works for the game, and it just makes it part of that experience.
Yeah, I guess one thing I was really impressed with was the museum. The fact that they have grown all these really great elements about it and really drilled home all the things that players loved, like the things like customizable fashion outfits, like being able to design your own and put them on a flag or put them on a t-shirt, etc. And now they've got this incredibly granular kiosk in Able Sisters where you can I'm sorry, that's really wrong, but you can absolutely download other people's content by using their player ID, their creator IDs, or even just a QR code using the Nintendo app. I think it's going to be wild when they build that out into the future. And
so, I think you're right there. I think you've come from Dreams World as well. And so in Dreams, obviously, there was a lot of that kind of content curation and content creation. And so coming from that, it's a thing. But in this, like you say, you can find the QR codes, you can go through your Instas and your Tumblrs and all that kind of stuff to find the QR codes. But at the moment, there's no easy way to do it. I reckon they'll introduce like a Mabel triplet. Do you know what I mean? Like Sable,
like
Mabel,
a random brother somewhere.
Stable or so. Yeah, maybe it's a brother. Like girls on the internet. That's how that works. And so I think you're right. I think that will be something that they will push in the future because if nothing else, the one thing the game feels lacking on, and this is the problem with the Switch, is that you have a world where Previously on the 3DS, the game was the game. It had, say, the 25 or 50 sets or whatever that were going onto the game, and they were going onto the game, and you could just find them at any random point. You could try and find all parts of all that kind of stuff. Now, you have the advantage of updating it, so they'll patch in whatever they want. But right now,
Correct.
the actual pick of like furniture and stuff, pretty slim pickings.
Yes, we are 10 days in, essentially, and I've only personally clocked about 50 hours, which is really exciting for me, and I know you've clocked way more than that.
Not way more, but more, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that like what they're making sure is that they're drip feeding the base content to the same, like all the players at the same time, so we're kind of experiencing it together at the same pace, except for those people out there that like to time travel and like get all the money hacks and get everything early, which is no fun for anybody except for them. I suppose that I like the fact that it's building at a gradual pace, but for players like yourself, Jace, that pace isn't fast enough. But I do think they've added a lot of other things that do add gameplay and add to the base mechanics, like things like Nook Miles and being able to travel to Mystery Islands.
So that was probably the one thing I was going to bring up in that exact vein, because I think you're right. I think people have been time traveling and back and forth and all that kind of stuff. They're able to go ahead to certain points, but because of the content is still being drip fed, there's no real point to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, unless you wanted a specific thing, like people try and use it to manipulate the stock market and stuff, like the turnips and stuff.
Oh yeah, don't even talk about that. I lost a lot of progress and just cried a little bit.
Yeah, so like they try and do that kind of stuff, and like that's always been an element of the game. But because of the nature of how they're releasing the content, they're kind of restricted from doing that. And you mentioned Nook Miles and stuff, and that's probably one of the ways that they've played just a little bit with the gameplay loop, like just enough. So previously you knew the gameplay loop, you either were on board with it or you thought this was dumb and boring, so why would I do it? The addition of Nook Miles, you get the double points things that you do, which are kind of five challenges that you do. Once you hit that point, you get a certain amount of Nook Miles. A certain amount of Nook Miles means Nook Miles tickets, which is a random dungeon. So basically, it's a randomly generated thing, different animals, different whatever. It really, I don't know, it adds to the gameplay loop. It makes the actual average playtime a little bit longer. But now, obviously, once you hit a certain point, Nook Miles can be used to buy certain things to build around your thing. Like, I traded a Nook Miles ticket for the onsen, like the hot spring. I don't regret
I've got that too.
Yeah, I don't regret it, but like,
No.
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's those things where it does that, and then like, and to me, the one thing as well is, you mentioned it previously, and a lot of people have their ways of kind of showing that, but it's like the weebiest game that's a low-key weeb game. Like most of the stuff you can get at the moment is all Japanese stuff. They know who the game's aimed at.
It's a homage to Japan culture.
Oh, yeah, and it's like, and so like, there's obviously people have made full little Japanese towns and stuff like that, like the roads.
Yeah, I downloaded someone's kimono style for my fashion outfits personally, so I'm here for it.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I think combined with the lack of content coming out at the moment, the goddamn Easter thing, which everything's a goddamn egg at the moment, like everything you turn over is an egg. I think you're right. I think the way they're drip feeding the content is something they can do on Switch they couldn't previously do. It's not bad. It's just it kind of slows your roll a little bit, and people are going to have a different viewpoint on that depending.
I agree. I think the future of Animal Crossing New Horizons really will stem from its live service content. And you just talked about the Easter stuff then. We're seeing that it's like a limited time event, which players can jump in and jump out of whenever they want to. But then it keeps people coming back for more and gives an excuse for Nintendo to bring out really cool limited items. But in my opinion, that kind of stuff really makes me get fear of missing out, that FOMO feeling of like, wait, I need to come back and check this out. Like, how do I get my hands on that? And I don't want to miss out. Like, how much do I have to pay? Like, I think the fact there are no microtransactions with that really cool live event content is even more exciting. And the fact there's so much more to come. And I think we'll be coming back for years to come with this.
Coming from Pocket Camp, where everything costs you tickets, to nothing costs you tickets is a bit of anyway. Look, thank you, Megan. Thank you for your time. I'm sure I'll see you around the islands. What fruit did you get?
Hey, I got cherries. What about you?
No, I'm oranges. I'm boring like that. So anyway, I'll see you around on the islands, no doubt. Thank you for your time, Megan.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it.